This episode is brought to you by the Neon Nail Company.
Welcome to the first episode of the Market Like a Millennial podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Rittenauer, and folks, it's been years in the making, but finally I am stepping out of the realm of master proofing and stepping into the world of marketing, and I am so excited about this. This is the first time that I've taken a journey on personal brand rather than building my father's roofing company, which I've been focused on really since 2017 on digital platforms. So for those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name's Andrew Rittenauer. I'm the head of all the creative when it comes to master roofing social media accounts. And you can follow us across all the platforms at masterproofing.memphis and check out our content today. Maybe drop a like, comment, opinion, whatever you guys got for me. I'm always interested in it. You can kind of get the gist of what I do. Most importantly, I love social media. It's a passion for me because it's always been a creative outlet in a sense. And if you would have asked me back in 2018 to start a podcast on social media, I would have said absolutely not. And the reason being, and people did ask me back then, but the reason being is I don't feel like the roofing industry was ready for a podcast back at that point in time. It wasn't until about 2020, 2021, really when the pandemic hit, that people started hopping in and putting out quality content and hiring people to put content together for them and really started taking social media seriously. And for the people who did take it seriously at an earlier stage in social, there were gains to be made. But really, around 2021, 2022, Instagram reached its full maturity. You had TikTok that was kind of coming on strong in 2020 that challenged Instagram, but they kind of both reached a stalemate between the two platforms around 2022, 2023, and it'd be more difficult to get to your audience on those platforms. So ultimately, what I hope to do here is to guide people, because that's one thing that I didn't have when I first started in social media when I was younger, is someone to help me and learn about creative. I had to kind of find my own way, which I'm glad I did, because it's been one of the greatest journeys I ever been on as far as creating my own personal brand, as far as pushing myself creatively, learning how to transition from pictures to videos, to doing awesome videos, to being on camera, to being good on camera. There's just so many different changes that I've seen in myself over the years. And I finally feel like I'm to the point where I'm actually ready to take on long form content, which is podcasts. And I'm so excited about the journey ahead, because ultimately this is a platform where I can say whatever I want, which is kind of scary, but it's fun at the same time, because we're going to talk about content strategies, things as far as topics in the industry, issues in the industry. We're going to have people on once in a blue moon, to hear their perspectives and how they have grown in the roofing industry. So I'm going to use this as a platform to have fun, to learn something new. This is a first-time journey for me. Of course, I've been on other people's podcasts. I've been on about 20 total. And they always been fun, but I always had someone to talk to. And this is a little bit different because you have internal dialogue that you have to be able to sit there and communicate with yourself. So it's going to be a journey for me and you. I look forward to it. I hope that I can help people build brand. I hope people can learn from me as a roofing salesman, or if you're an owner and operator. We're here to help everyone out. And what I ultimately hope to do is provide as much value for you and give you insights on my creative process, because there's been people who analyze me on a monthly basis, if not daily basis in some cases, where, they kind of break down what I do. It's always good hearing from the actual source, right? And I don't think that perspective has ever been shared. So I appreciate people who have put my name out there in their seminars about, marketing, and has got the word out about what I do, my creative process. But I really am looking forward to kind of shedding light on how I operate on social and the way you guys should approach it. So start with recapping the past couple of years for me. It's kind of been wild and eye-opening is the best way to describe it. Really, back in 2020, 2021 was the first time that I really understood that people were starting to put eyes on my content and starting to take notice of what I was doing. The first thing was my brother, who worked at Watkins Construction at the time, which is a $25 million a year roofing company down in Jackson, Mississippi. He was consulting down there. And they had Joseph Hughes and his team up there to teach them on marketing and branding on digital platforms. And my brother had mixed opinions of my presence at that time. Wasn't really sure if it was the right thing for me. He definitely knew I took it seriously and I was passionate about it, but we definitely had discussions about if I put too much time into it, if it was really worth it. Because at that time, it was just different. Marketing was viewed differently in the roofing industry. People wanted to talk about Google. People wanted to talk about door-to-door. People wanted to talk about mailing, but no one wanted to talk about social. There were not many people in our industry that were trying to make a personal brand and trying to build something. And really what I wanted to do is show off my father's company and show what we could do here at Master Roofing every day. And so I started documenting, started building my digital portfolio, started using it inside of the house. And not only did it help me close more deals, but ultimately it helped me build a following. And mostly it was comprised of other contractors, other people who loved our work, other people who sought inspiration out of our work. And that only grew over the years. So long story short, in that presentation that Joseph put on, he actually brought up my profile and kind of broke down what I was doing on social and kind of used me as an example of what to do. And that was the first time my brother gave me a call after that meeting. He said, "Bro, you won't believe what just happened." He's like, "Joseph Hughes just came in, which is a big marketing guy. And he's like, you're big on the social. He brought up your profile and actually used you as an example on how to operate on Instagram." And I thought that was one of the coolest things at the time. And that's when I really first started understanding that I was getting eyes on my content. Because if you have someone like that talking about you to that many people on a yearly basis, that's a huge platform to be able to speak to. I'm forever grateful for that. Several years later, continue to do all the different podcasts, continue to produce content daily, which is the most important thing. You have to stay consistent. I go to the International Roofing Expo in 2023, and I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I promised a couple people I would be there. And so I ended up having to build the day that the International Roofing Expo started, and it was a $2 million house that was in a very prestigious neighborhood here in Memphis, Tennessee, and had a $15,000 gutter system, stucco, just everything that could potentially go wrong was on that house. And so I ended up making the sacrifice of staying here and making sure that we were able to supervise that job. Nothing got damaged throughout the process. Once that it was completed, I decided to drive 6 hours to Dallas and keep my promise to the people who reached out to me on Instagram at that point in time to be there at the International Roofing Expo. What was crazy is I thought I would just go there and hang out with 2 people or go out there and say hi to a few people here or there, whatever the case is. I ended up taking several pictures and hanging out with a lot of really good people. And that was the first time that I heard other people's opinions about me. And to hear people say, that I'm the GOAT of roofing content on social platforms, it just took me back. Most importantly, I kind of came back from that expo really with a different perspective, kind of scared at first, not really knowing what to do with that many eyes on your platform when you actually see people. By the end of the roofing expo, we had a group of about 10 people following me around, watching me make a video on the expo. And just kind of driving home, as I'm driving home, I just remember thinking to myself, like, wow, this thing's much bigger than I thought it was. I came back with a different perspective, and I continued to work, continued to sell roofs, and do what I normally do on the content creation side. And fast forward to recently, Neon Nails, who is actually the sponsor of this podcast, reached out to me. Sean, the owner, said, "Hey man, I would love to send you some boxes of the new product I'm working on. We're a startup. We're based out of Missouri, and I own a roofing company myself. And I would love to get my product in your hand because I think it's great and innovative, and let you put it out to the masses and tell them what you think about it. And I said, yeah, sure. I'd love to see a product. My father's actually building a roof in the spring. We could definitely use it on that. And so he said, well, if you're into it, he says, I'll actually drive these nails to you in Memphis, Tennessee from Missouri, and we can actually go through the product together and maybe shoot some content together. And I never say no. That's my first rule. If someone asks me to do the podcast, the answer is yes. If someone wants to do something with me, I'm all ears, always. If Sean came down, we ended up producing 2 pieces of content together, and we put it out. And within 48 hours, not only did he get contractors reaching out, but he actually had Beacon reach out to him and say that they want pallets in all their locations across the United States, or at least several of them. So Sean has some work cut out for him as far as finding a warehouse and ultimately getting some kinks worked out with the manufacturing of the product. It was something that showed me how much power social has. To sit there and be able to make a difference with 2 posts that we put out was just wild. And so ultimately I said, you know what? I think I have something to say. That was the ultimate vindication of what I've been doing over the past several years. I always wanted a brand deal with a major manufacturer, talk to the head of marketing for some of the companies, but unfortunately that just never ended up working out. And whether it was I was too controversial or whatever the case was, it just wasn't for me. Maybe sometime in the future, I'm always open to the discussion. But most importantly, having that opportunity to work with Neon Nails was something I'm forever grateful for. So now that you guys are familiar with who I am, I figure why not let's go ahead and get into the actual topic of this episode, which is who does the fucking marketing, right? That's the biggest question. It's a big debate. A lot of owners will say it's the sales guys, and that's one of my favorite DMs that I get all the time from owners. It's, how do I get my guys motivated to produce content like you? In all honesty, the owners of the company need to be a part of the conversation, whether you're hiring someone to do marketing for you, whether you're trying to promote your guys within your organization to produce content. You ultimately need to be at the helm of the operation. The question I would propose to any owner out there that's wondering the answer to this question and where I'm going with this is, who has more time to spare in their day? The sales guys, the production manager, or the owner? And the answer will always, most of the time, be the owner, unless if you're wearing all the hats in the operation, which if you are, reach out to me. I got some people I can hook you up with that can help you get organized and start becoming a better operator by being able to trust other people to do jobs for you. Most importantly, you should have plenty of free time. My father goes in each and every day. He spends a couple hours working on scheduling, making sure everything is all right as far as making sure that he's on top of any repairs. Anything that pops up, he's taking care of. Has to go out to the jobs. He usually does about once a week. Kind of makes his runs through the different crews, making sure that everything's up to his standards. Other than that, he's off golfing. And me, who is a rarity, I'm out here selling roofs and then keeping up with different things with productions and generating content at a high level. But for most people, I want to make it clear that the head of the operation, the owner of the company, should always be at the helm of marketing, because how else are your core values? How else is your authenticity, the message and the brand that you want your individual sales guys to have? How else is that going to be presented if you're not being involved? So when owners are in my inbox and they say, how do I get my guys motivated? I can't get them to produce content like you do. My answer is, why don't you get out in the field and you help them build their personal brands? It's ultimately only going to make you more money. Don't you think it would build more morale if you were helping people with their marketing? You know, getting out in the field with them and doing videos with them to help them sell roofs to get better on camera, to start developing themselves as sales representatives. And one thing that I found out kind of going through the different processes with being a creator is the more that I flew my drone, I became better at flying a drone, and I would now consider myself an expert. The more I got on camera, the better I got on camera, and now I consider myself an expert. And all those things translate when you're inside of the house. If you're on camera more often, you become more punctual. And so what I'm saying is, when you're at the head of the operation and when you're at the forefront of getting these guys out in the field, whether it's taking them to go door knocking or taking them out for a day to where you guys are building a team experience, whether it's going go-kart racing or whatever the case is, that's all helping out the individual morale of your company. And it's helping them understand that you care about what they're doing and how they're perceived in the home and online. Providing this, ultimately, what you guys are doing is you guys are setting yourself up for success in the future. And so for me, if you're an owner and you want your guys to feel positive about you, right? Even if you have someone doing your marketing, being out in the field with the guys as they're cutting these pieces of content with the marketing company and being the director, being there is a huge deal. And so if you asked any other roofing salesman at Master Roofing their opinion on what I do with content and how I present them, they all love what I do for them with the company. And I am proud of that, because ultimately taking the time out of my day to go help them produce a piece of content with someone like Mr. Ed Hill. If you guys go on my Instagram, you'll actually see his videos. He's a one-take guy. He comes from that Zig Ziglar era of sales. He's in his late 60s and one of the greatest mentors that I could ever ask for when it comes to roofing sales. To be able to tell his story, to help him produce content, ultimately gives me reps to make myself better at filming, but also it shows him I care about what he has going on, and he gets more leads off. So he actually told me recently how he knows Instagram, how he knows Facebook works, is that when people call him, they're no longer saying that they found him by mail or no longer found him by door hangers. What they're calling off of is that they found him online. And that's ultimately what I want to hear as a creator, because that means I'm doing my job properly. So what if you're a roofing salesman and you're saying to yourself, well, my owner is shit, right? I don't get nothing out of him other than a paycheck. And he doesn't want anything else to do with the company other than putting on a good roof, taking care of the problems, and cutting a paycheck at the end of the day, taking care of my family, taking care of his family. If that's the case, you can always partner up with other individuals on your team. If you guys are passionate about this, if you work with your spouse, I know a lot of you guys out there work with your spouse, tell them to hold the camera. That's what I do. I have a friend that I mentor, and he follows me around, and we work on content together. I'm actually teaching him how to make content as we speak. So if you have a good friend, if you have someone that's in the roofing industry with you that you get along with, go ahead and ask them to get out together. And maybe you guys go knock some doors. And then maybe you stop by your building and do some content around. And for those of you who are worried about your fellow salesmen, taking them out to one of your builds because they might sneak into your neighborhood, don't do that. Be accountable. Work together. There should be a trust system, which blows my mind so much. I see in this industry where people will sweep in and steal other people's neighborhoods or try to steal a job here and there. Don't do that. Have integrity, have character, be a leader within your organization, because that's what your organization needs to get to that next level. And ultimately, if you have someone that's not supportive as a leader, as far as an owner goes, you can always rely on other people if you develop relationships with them within your organization. don't be that guy that walks into the office and says nothing to no one and goes about your business. Form those relationships. That way you have someone to rely on. And if you go through a drought, which happens every now and then, right? You can't sell a roof. You can always go to that mentor or go to that associate and say, hey, why don't we get together and we run through a couple presentations and see where I'm going wrong here and get their feedback. They can act as an owner of a home and you can act as a salesman and go through your presentation. And he might say, well, hey, here's where you're losing me, right? And then next time you go into the house and you make that one adjustment, it gets you to close the deal. So ultimately, it's good to have friends in this industry, and you don't want to make enemies. The people who make enemies, they most of the time are successful. But at the end of the day, when no one else likes you and you're successful, that's a tough position to be in. I've always been the one to lean into relationships rather than push them away. And I think that creates a healthy environment for people to work in. And it'll create happiness when you can go to work and you're friends with your associates. So if you want a good culture, if you want to make friends rather than enemies, then be that guy who walks in and that looks to help your associates get to the next level. Whether that's going out and helping with them content and vice versa, they do the same thing for you. That's only going to push you guys to the next level and it's going to hold you accountable. Because if I go out with this guy today and we say we're going to knock X amount of doors until we get a deal or we get 5 or 6 inspections, whatever the case is, that's accountability at its finest. And it gets you out working. It's going to ultimately translate to more deals for you. There's another thought that I want to leave you guys with, a little dime for you guys to take home and really think about. Because ultimately, being an owner, you have to be able to realize that your salesmen are going to have strong points and they're going to have faults. And you have to be able to help a frog find warm water. And what that means is that wherever they are good at, you have to be able to focus and hone those abilities and further their progression within those traits that they have. And ultimately, the things that they're not good at, the things that they struggle with, you have to actively work on them, work on those issues, and be patient with them because they're developing. And one thing that I see all the time is that new people come into an organization and there's very little patience for those people. It's a sink or swim mentality. And you can't have that, especially with some people that potentially could be high performers. So sometimes it's just taking the time to develop these different characters within your organization. And that's one thing that I always stress that you need to do is focus on who these individuals are and how you can progress them further as an individual and take sales out of it. And we're here to make each other better at the end of the day. So help them find warm water, because if you help them find warm water, they're going to be comfortable and flourish. And so if you have someone like me who's good at marketing, that's one thing my father let me do. He let me step into that role and gave me free range of creative. And it took us to places that we never thought it would. And it might be something to where you have a guy that is a great salesman and you move him up. There's a natural progression. You know, as these salesmen get older, you know, a lot of us start out young. I started when I was 21 in sales. I spent about a year in production management where I cut my teeth. And ultimately, when I got into sales, I had so much freedom, right? It was the first time I was making real money, you know, doing $1 million a year as a 22, 23-year-old kid. It was complete financial freedom, having fun, and enjoying the process of becoming who I am today. But as I got older, started having kids, and I kind of figured out I had to be smarter with my time because my time had to be used differently. And so as these guys get older, as they start having kids, developing families, most importantly, you want to make room for them within your organization, make positions, put them in leadership roles, and bring in new people for them to train and make your organization better. I hope that you guys got value out of this first episode. We're just getting started here. This was my first one. I appreciate you guys being patient with me, but we're just getting started here. There's so much more to talk about. So many key issues, so many things that we can do better, and definitely intricate details that are left out of the big picture when it comes to social. So I look forward to delivering to you guys. This is going to be a forever thing. That's how it always is with me. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, and thank you guys so much for your time. I'll see you all in the next one.